Good. We will be live in approximately 5 seconds.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Sean Scanlon. I am the House co-chair of the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, and I want to welcome you all to a special informational hearing on a very important deal that is being presented to the legislature by the administration. We will have several speakers today that will tell you about that deal, and then there will be time for question and answers from those panelists as we contemplate the agreement that is before us today. Before we get to that, Senator Fonfara, would you like to say anything?
Just ready to listen and learn, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Representative Cheeseman, Senator Martin, any opening remarks?
Ditto, Senator Fonfara.
Okay. I would just say that I think this is a very exciting thing that the administration is putting forward before us. I think it's a really big deal for Connecticut. Obviously, we are the proud maker of the helicopters that defend our country, and to keep that happening here in Connecticut and to sustain the jobs that they have, I think is an incredibly important thing for the state. So I want to commend the governor and his administration and Sikorsky and Lockheed Martin for coming to this agreement. And I'm excited to talk about it today and excited to begin the presentation. So with that, we'll turn it over to Mr. Paul Mounds, who is the Chief of Staff to the Governor, as all of us know, to begin the presentation today.
Well, thank you, Chairman Scanlon, Chairman Fonfara, Ranking Members Cheeseman, Martin. I want to thank you all for having us here today. From the administration, I'm going to be joined by our Secretary of OPM, our newly named Secretary of OPM, Jeff Beckham, and Commissioner David Lehman of DECD, who played a very strong role in negotiating this agreement on behalf of the state with Lockheed Martin Sikorsky. And we're also joined by a person you all know very well, Tom Fiore, who is Principal Finance Analyst at Office of Policy and Management. And he knows my rule. I always ask him if I'm on the phone with him, if he has his calculator with him, because he brings it everywhere. I will allow those from Lockheed Martin Sikorsky who are here to introduce themselves as we go further. But the one that I will identify who will be leading on their presentation will be George Mitchell, Vice President of Operations of Lockheed Martin overall. And we're also joined by someone who's a dear friend, as I know my tenure in government. I've worked on many various agreements and deals with him, and that's Rocco Callio of the Teamsters, who's been a great partner of not only Lockheed Martin Sikorsky, but also the Lamont administration in the state of Connecticut. This is an agreement that is much different, I would say, than the previous Lockheed Martin Sikorsky agreement with the state of Connecticut in various ways. That previous agreement played a large role in being able to ensure that they are and would have remained as a leader in helicopter production for the United States of America in our armed forces, and also to ensure that the headquarters of Sikorsky, while they was going through the transition from then United Technologies to Lockheed Martin, that the headquarters remain in Stratford. This one builds on that relationship in very different ways, and Commissioner Lehman and George Mitchell will go through those various details. But one of the major aspects that I will say is at this time, and Sikorsky, Lockheed Martin will explain, is that as they're going after competitive opportunities, it's a great opportunity for the state of Connecticut to further solidify the role that the state has played to ensure that our suppliers and jobs directly and indirectly created by Sikorsky Lockheed Martin in the manufacturing space and the supplier space remain vibrant here in the state of Connecticut as new opportunities to support the mission of the United States Armed Services and the United States of America came about. And this agreement will allow for that to occur as these competitive opportunities go forward. One of the major aspects that's going to be said by Commissioner Lehman is in terms of the funding side, and that those funding opportunities that the state will participate in won't come about unless certain milestones are met, whether through the bidding process or in the job retention and process as well. So one of the things that I'm going to do right now is, like I said, we have our full team here to be able to answer questions, but I want to first pass it off to Vice President of Operations of Lockheed Martin, George Mitchell, who will begin the presentation that is representative of this historic agreement between Lockheed Martin Sikorsky and the state of Connecticut, and this opportunity to sustain Connecticut's leadership and rotorcraft production for decades to come. In the midst of that presentation, David Lehman will then be able to talk about what this means from the state perspective, and also, I think the major aspect, what are we asking you all to be able to take up during this legislative session to further solidify this agreement through the legislative process. And we'll have Rocco Callio, who will be able to speak about it from the workers' perspective directly. And as I said, we have members of Department of Office of Policy and Management, Department of DCD, and Lockheed Martin Sikorsky on the line to answer any and all questions presented by the committee. So with that, I'll pass it off to George Mitchell.
Good morning, all. Chief of Staff Mounts, thank you for the intro, and to all our representatives and senators from Connecticut, thank you for hosting this meeting to allow us to present our next opportunity, and also the citizens of Connecticut that might be tuned in. Good morning. So with me this morning, I have a few key leaders from Sikorsky-Lockheed Martin. We have Andy Adams. He's the Vice President of the Future Vertical Lift Programs here at Sikorsky. Robert Head, he is our Vice President of Lockheed Martin Government Affairs. You heard Rocco Calo. Rocco is a partner of ours. He's our Teamster Union leader and regional Teamster Vice President. We also have several other people. I don't want to not mention all of us that are on, but Julie Dow and Zena have been key participants in negotiating, putting this package together. So I think Chief of Staff Mounds did a really nice job of kind of setting the stage for the future. If we can go to the first slide, I'll get into a little bit of the detail on the program.
So George, it's David Lehman. Bree, would you enable me to share my screen? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. So while we're doing that, I'll just continue to talk. So, this really is a historic opportunity. We thank the state of Connecticut and the Teamsters for the current EDO that we have on the 53K. That agreement is performing very well. We've met our metrics in all of the 3 years since the past 3 years. We're well on our way to continue to support that EDO. What we're coming to at this point is what's shown on this slide is really the future of our company. So we'll talk a lot about Black Hawk. Back in the 1970s, our forefathers invented the best helicopter ever produced for the utility mission for the U.S. Army. We won that competition. It was a competition. And just this year, we'll produce our 5,000th Black Hawk. And the Black Hawk is flown by the U.S. Army and many other militaries around the world. And the reason why I brought that history in is because these two model helicopters that are on this slide will replace the Black Hawk going forward. So we expect the Black Hawk to be in production through 2050. So no short-term end in sight. It's still in high demand. It's still a very active production program. But as we transition into the 2030s and beyond, the Defiant aircraft, which is on the left side of this slide, will be the Black Hawk replacement. We are in a competition, so some of what we might be able to answer or not answer, we'll try to be as open as we can. But I just want to caution everyone that it is a competitive bid. We expect the award sometime later this year. In any case, so the Defiant is new technology. We call these two platforms. You have the Defiant on the left and the Raider aircraft. These are actually flying prototypes in our West Palm Beach Flight Development Center. The U.S. Army Future Vertical Lift is the overall umbrella name for the two types of technology. And below that title, you have the detail on future long-range assault aircraft, or as we call it, the FLRAA. And then below that, the future attack reconnaissance helicopter, or also known as FARA on the right side. So there's two different size machines. The Defiant is a Black Hawk sized platform. Its primary mission will be troop transport, medevac, and other missions, just like the Black Hawk of today. And on the right side, the Raider will be a scout attack armed aircraft. So it's really, I thank the state for the 53K. That program is going strong today. We're actually going to produce just in the next week our third production aircraft here in Connecticut. That aircraft will be going into our flight operation, and very shortly we'll see that aircraft flying around our neighborhoods here in Connecticut. It'll be delivered in June, and then we have 2 more aircraft to go for this year. I mentioned that only because the current EDO is on the 53K, so that program is going very well. This would be additive to that, and Commissioner Lehman will give you some of those details. So if we go to the next slide, why is this so important? We've got really cool technology. This product is performing very well. We've got many flight hours on the testbed aircraft. Just recently, we brought the Defiant on a long mission from our West Palm Beach campus to Tennessee to attend the Quad A conference. It flew over 400 miles, which was the farthest we've flown outside of our facility. We've set numerous speed records and other accomplishments in the product life cycle. The Raider aircraft is also performing in West Palm Beach. And really, this technology is going to transform how we fight and protect our soldiers in the future. So the U.S. Army is transforming its fleet, mostly Black Hawks, Apaches, and other products, into a multi-domain force. This technology will replace the entire helicopter fleet over the next number of years. We believe our X2 technology is the right answer for the U.S. Army. We offer fully integrated systems, which means that all the avionics on the aircraft and other Lockheed Martin product, including the air vehicle, will be a total synergistic system. We will have integrated weapons and mission technology on board to ensure that our soldiers, airmen, and Marines are safe and able to come home through the FEL ecosystem. So what's shown in that photo on the right would be the future. As we use the aircraft for troop transport, medevac, we would have numbers of aircraft that would be able to fly in very quickly. The top speed on this aircraft today is 260 knots, which is about 300 miles per hour, which is almost double the current helicopter speed. It also can fly twice as far and twice as fast. So a lot of good technology there. So we are developing a competitive solution to meet the U.S. Army needs. We know from our Black Hawk experience that once we are successful with one U.S. government customer, it will open a door to other follow-on type of contracts, including potentially an offering to the U.S. Navy to replace the Seahawk fleet, which is also a Sikorsky product, the Marine Corps, Air Force, and other applications, including the U.S. Coast Guard. So there is bright promise for another franchise type model that will carry us potentially for the next 50 years, like we are feeling right now with the Black Hawk. We're going on 50 years of production on Black Hawk, and we think this will have the same potential franchise. The aircraft is designed here in Connecticut. All the dynamic components are built in Connecticut. So we manufacture the transmission blades in our shop here in Stratford, Connecticut. We also have facilities in Bridgeport, Connecticut that will build the airframe for the FARA aircraft. We also, in our other sites here in Connecticut, we have facilities in Trumbull, Connecticut, Shelton, Connecticut. Our main plant, obviously, in corporate headquarters here in Stratford, where I'm based today. And then also the Bridgeport plant that I mentioned. Okay, next slide, please. So this is why this is important. If you look at the gray area, we're calling our legacy product, really our production programs of today, the 53K, the UH-60M, the CRH, and the Romeo Seahawk MH-60R. You can see over time as these aircraft and our contracts diminish, we're predicting these are people. So the scale on the left are number of employees. We currently have 8,000 folks that are working on production related programs. Our plan is is to sustain that level, as you see going from the left side of the chart to the right. But the mix will change. So over time, we know that the UH-60M quantities will be decreasing. The CRH program will come to an end in the late 2030 timeframe. The 53K will carry us long into the future. And the Romeo, right now, it's actually increasing production. So we've got some good news there, but it won't be a very long-term solution. It'll kind of go the way of the Blackhawk. So these FEL programs are extremely important to the longevity of the company and to the stability of the workforce. So you can see the green area on top. We currently have people working on the program today to keep the flying prototypes while building the flying prototypes, designing, and also keeping those products flying in the demonstration phase, and also quite active on designing the next generation products and working proposals and things like that. So we do have about 150 employees today working on these future products, and that will grow and fill in the void as we get to the right side of the chart. And as you see with the green arrow on the far right, we're expecting through 2070, much like we're experiencing on Blackhawk today. Once we start this franchise model, it'll keep on going and keep us secure for a long time. Next slide, please. So the picture on the right is our actual Stratford factory. So for those of you that have been in, I would invite our elected officials to stop by for a factory tour. But ultimately, it's a very clean facility. What's shown here is the production of the CH-53K helicopter. That would be aircraft 9. That aircraft is actually complete today. So all the surrounds are in, the windows are in, and it's ready to go into the flight operations. This photo is about a month old. On the left side, really, why is this important? Sikorsky is known through the world as being the helicopter innovator, industry leader, and our plan is to continue that on far into the future. So this strengthens the future by taking us to the next level in technology with a really integrated aircraft, really system oriented, that's fast maneuverable, and accomplishes the mission that our customers need very effectively and efficiently. Really the key to this whole agreement is maintaining and bolstering Connecticut's leadership in rotorcraft, and not only for Sikorsky, but our supply chain. You'll hear coming up the number of suppliers in Connecticut. It's a very conservative number. There are requirements in this package on minimum spend, employment levels, and as you heard earlier, it's a performance-based contract. So our goal is to stabilize and sustain the Connecticut workforce to make sure that we're cost effective and efficient. Cost is going to be extremely important on this competitive win, and also to keep our products viable long into the future. We all know that in Connecticut we're not a low cost state, so we make it up through productivity and with super great technology and all the brain power and technology that we bring to bear to have the best products that our customers want. But we do have to be affordable. So what this deal will help enable is a contract award to us, which will flow down to our suppliers. It'll keep us on the national and international stage as the world premier helicopter manufacturer. It'll help grow our leadership in manufacturing, engineering, and innovation. We're already there, and we're going to continue to build on our success of the 53K as we transition to the future. And really, we all, as we work at Sikorsky in Connecticut, we also live in Connecticut, and really help strengthen our communities. I told, I'm involved in a lot of stuff outside of work, a few board positions, along with a lot of charities. So you get the spin-off benefit of, good leaders being involved in the community, helping to lead and teach, mentor, whether it be robotics programs or scout leaders or baseball coaches, et cetera, et cetera. The list of how we help Connecticut is very deep. And the fabric of Connecticut is, I think, what I said recently. Okay, that concludes my chart. We will be available for questions.
Great. George, thanks so much. So I'm going to go through from Connecticut's perspective, or at least from DCD's perspective, how we have thought about this negotiation and agreement, and how we think about what we're getting, if you will, in return for the financial benefit that the state is providing to Sikorsky-Lockheed Martin over the next 2 decades. So first and foremost, Sikorsky will commit to maintain their headquarters in Connecticut through 2042. That's 10 years further than what was agreed to in the 2016 agreement. As you just heard from George, Sikorsky will also maintain Stratford as Sikorsky's primary production facility for the existing U.S. government military aircraft, the 4 lines that George just articulated. In addition to maintaining the existing programs, and this is what we think is most important about this, FVL is the future, as you've heard, and it's not just the next 5 or 10 years, this is the next 50 years potentially, the Army and beyond. So adding 1 or 2 FVL lines to Connecticut and Sikorsky's operations here, we think is critically important for Sikorsky, for the significant workforce there, but importantly, the over 240 supply chain companies that are also based in Connecticut that Sikorsky is currently engaged with. There are going to be key targets focused on headcount, wages, supplier spend, and capital expenditures. I want to go through those in a bit more detail in a second. And Sikorsky is going to continue its best-in-class diversity and workforce training programs, trying to make sure that we're getting local workers heavily involved, and Rocco can touch on this as well. In terms of key targets, though, I want to put a bit more detail on this. So on the headcount front, what Sikorsky is committing to, and it really depends if they win one of the contracts, FLRAA or FARA, or both of the contracts. But between 2022 and 2042, there's a minimum amount of jobs that will be required, again, depending on what they win, of between 7,250 and then 7,750 jobs. So we're really talking about maintaining significant employment in Stratford at Sikorsky, certainly if they win both of those contracts for the next 2 decades at minimum. In terms of supplier spend, as I mentioned, Sikorsky has significant suppliers in Connecticut, over 240. They have requirements in their existing agreement with the CH-53K to spend between 300 million and 410 million for the next decade. What this agreement will do in addition to that is it will increase the supplier spend to 470 million to those in-state Connecticut suppliers for that next decade. So from 2032 to 2042, close to $500 million annually will be spent by Sikorsky on those suppliers. Certainly that has a magnifying effect and a multiplier effect on Connecticut workers, Connecticut supply chain, and I'll talk a little bit about jobs here in a bit, but that is a significant spend that will continue into that second decade. CapEx, Sikorsky has invested a lot of money into their facility in Stratford and the other facilities George mentioned, but they are committing to between 70 million and I think $84 million per year of incremental CapEx spend over the next decade as they ramp up for 1 or 2 of these new lines. So they're going to continue to build out their footprint in Connecticut with significant spend on the ground to make sure that their factory is ready for the next generation or 2. I want to make a couple comments on the incentives. As was mentioned before, this is performance-based. So importantly, this is different from some other deals that have been done in 2 ways. One, there is no money going out the door to Sikorsky day one. They are earning the money over the first 8 years approximately of the contract, and then there's a compliance period for the remainder of the contract. No money going out the door day one. Secondly, we're not utilizing bonding. The two tools, if you will, that are being utilized here to provide a financial benefit to Sikorsky over time. One is a sales and use tax offset, which we plan on maximizing every year. And then the second is a payroll tax rebate based on the new jobs that will be created from the 1 or 2 new lines. So again, performance-based, no bonding required, no money needed day one. It'll be earned and then maintained over time by Sikorsky-Lockheed Martin. So 75 million is the total benefit if Sikorsky wins both contracts. If they are only successful on one contract, the total benefit that they could receive is 50 million, 50, not 75 million. I do want to put some numbers, and there was a brochure that was provided to this group in terms of the overall footprint of Sikorsky and the significant economic benefit. But we ran some numbers at DECD in terms of econometric modeling on what we think the incremental benefit is to Connecticut. And I can go through this in more detail if there are questions, but the way that we think about this is in return for the 75 million over 2 decades of foregone revenue that the state would have otherwise had, there is roughly 2,000 average direct jobs over that 2-decade period. And the total jobs, so including indirect and induced jobs, suppliers, restaurants, you can kind of go across the board. There's 4,700 average jobs over that 2-decade period. That leads to close to 30 billion of incremental GDP as we model it over that 2-decade period. And importantly, 670 million of incremental net new tax revenue, and that's net of expenses to the state of Connecticut. So for our 75 million in investment, it's almost a 10x return in terms of tax revenue alone, with all those significant multiplier effects. Last comment I want to make, and then I'll turn it over to Rocco, and he can provide some perspective on the jobs and the workforce and how important that is. But I think there is significant upside in this agreement. We all appreciate the strength of incumbency status, and we've seen that with the Blackhawk over the past 40 years and potentially longer here. But as George was mentioning, the current bid is out to the Army, where we wish Sikorsky the best, and we wanted to be a good partner, which is why we entered into this negotiation and hope to enter into an agreement with Sikorsky if the legislature agrees. But the upside of whether it's the Navy, other parts of the armed forces, the Marines adopting this technology as well, the Israelis, the Germans, international adoption of this technology. We want to make sure Connecticut is the incumbent, and that Stratford is the base for those helicopters, not just for the next 20 years, but for the next 50 years. And I think there is significant upside in terms of jobs and economic activity if we can maintain this incumbency status. And that's why it was so critical that we worked hand in hand with Sikorsky on this agreement. I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions after we're done, but I will turn it over to Rocco at this point.
Good morning, everyone. Chairman Fonfara, Chairman Scanlon, ranking members Cheeseman and Martin, everybody else that took the time to be on this call today. I want to just upfront thank you for being here. For those who don't know me, my name is Rocco Calo. I am the Secretary Treasurer and Principal Officer of Teamsters Local 1150. We are the group that represents the men and women at Sikorsky Aircraft. I'm also the Vice President for Joint Council 10, which is a collection of all the Teamster locals within the New England states. And recently I was elected as VP to the International, an Eastern Region VP to the International, and assigned the duty of being a director of the industrial trades for the country, for all the Teamsters in the country. I'm here to offer support for this agreement and to give a little bit of background on the importance of it to not only Sikorsky, but to the, over 4,000 women and men that we represent there. Together, we have a great partnership, as George alluded to. We've been able to do a lot of great things. We provide, jobs for thousands of residents. And I kind of pause when we use the word jobs, because what we've been able to create at Sikorsky is more than a job, right? It is a career. It's a career where you jump right into upper middle class living once you achieve a job there, employment there. We work collaboratively on tons of issues, most importantly, diversity, educating the youth through our school to career program. We're able to reach out to area high schools, to juniors in those high schools, bring them into the shop for an 8-week period during the summer. We make them Teamsters. We put them to work. It's not just a shadowing program. We let them get some real hands-on. They go back to school in their senior years. They do the right thing in school. They're invited back again for another 8-week stint in their senior year. And then if there's available employment, they're hired on full time. So you're taking someone that's 18 years old, and again, throwing them right into middle class living. Throughout the course of this program, we do several things. One of them is a parents' night we do at the Union Hall. We bring the parents in with the students, explain to them what's going to happen. And I cannot tell you how many times when we tell the parents what these students are going to be earning on this summer job, they pull me aside and say, hey, can you help me get a job? I cannot walk up and down that factory floor without being pulled over by, a 25, 30, 40-year member saying, hey, Rock, I need a little help. Can you help get my son in? Can you help get my daughter in? I have a neighbor that's looking for a job. And these are people, as I said, that have been there 25, 30, 40 years that understand what this career means. And we want to see that legacy continue. We're very proud of it. I know George is, I know I am, and all of you should be, because I know you work so hard to help, number one, keep jobs in this state and to help keep us competitive. Also, I want to point out on this agreement, which is a little bit different than in 2016, there was 3 partners in 2016. There was the state, Sikorsky, and the Teamsters, and we all ponied up. There were some serious mid-contract concessions that we stepped up and ratified. It should be clear that there are no concessions being asked from my members in this particular agreement. And as we said, it's really an agreement where money is earned and not just handed out. If we're successful, again, you saw the chart, we'll be able to maintain thousands of jobs and probably grow some here at Sikorsky. But in the state, we talk about well over 200 suppliers, small businesses, right? This means a lot to everybody. So I just, on behalf of my 4,100 members, want to thank you all for taking the time to look into this. We're asking for your support, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have for me.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Rocco. But Mr. Mounds, please. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
No. Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, I was just saying thank you to our panel. I also failed to mention that Commissioner Boughton in the Department of Revenue Services, and that team is also on the line. I failed to mention that earlier, but as the rest of the team said, as we believe that this is a great deal for Connecticut, great deal for the workforce of Connecticut and our municipalities of Connecticut, and pass it off to you, Chairman, for any questions from members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mounds, and thank you to all of the folks who came to testify this morning. We will begin question and answer. I see Representative Meskers's hands, but before I get to that, want to see if the ranking member or Senator Fonfara have any questions to kick us off. Senator Fonfara?
I will continue to listen and learn, Mr. Chairman.
All right. We will go first to the ranking member, Representative Cheeseman, followed by Representative Meskers.
Thank you very much, Chairman Scanlon, and thank you all for being here today. I guess my first question, and this is more of a strategic one. Obviously, we know the life cycle of helicopters, the importance for military operations, but we've recently seen with the Navy's littoral warships, you design a defense system for an enemy that you think you're going to face, and all of a sudden it changes. How confident you are, Sikorsky, that these 2 new future vertical lifts are going to work regardless of what the United States sees on a global level in terms of our threats? And I don't know who's best placed to answer that question. Obviously, probably somebody at Sikorsky.
I'll take an attempt at it, and then Andy, if you'd like to help me. So I think it's fair to say that our aircraft, even though the Black Hawk has been in production over 45 years, we're about to sign our 10th 5-year multi-year contract over the course of the summer. That product has evolved. When it first started back in the late 1980s, it was known as the UH-60A model. Along the way, it became the Lima or L model, and today's production variant is the M. So over time, the aircraft has gained more power. It went from 2,800 shaft horsepower to 3,400, just to name, as wide chord blades, carries more weight, carries more troops. So our products evolved over time to keep it relevant and also have the latest and greatest technology, whether it be fly-by-wire or added safety enhancements. The 53K is of all fly-by-wire aircraft. It has onboard diagnostics, health monitoring. It's extremely state-of-the-art. It's the model that everyone wants, so we have high expectations there. So our company mantra, all the way back to the days of Igor Sikorsky, is to rescue and save people. And we continue to innovate and design and improve the products on a daily basis. So these new technologies, future vertical lift, X2 technology, as we're calling it, you can see flying in Andy's background there. These aircraft are purposely built to fit the same landing zone. In some cases, carry more people or weight. Really building off of the lessons learned in history of the Black Hawk to bring our customers, in this case, the U.S. Army, their next generation product that is really relevant. And Andy, maybe you can jump in here.
Sure thing. Thanks, George, and a great description. And additionally, what Representative, what you're asking is what will make this, the right platform for the next 40, 50 years. And the Army took a strategy that is completely different than what any of the other services are doing, and have based all the technology on what they call open system architecture, which really is the foundation for all the electronics and what we call mission systems. So consider those the radios, the sensors, really the electronics portion of the vehicle. And what they've asked for is to have it completely open to where anybody can come in and change out any product that they like. So if a new radar gets invented or a new radio, anybody, whether it's the Army, whether it's Sikorsky, or even a third party, can do that independently. And that's what will keep this fresh from a technology standpoint and be able to outpace the threats, the current threats that are out there and the future threats. And that's what really makes this completely different than, I would say, any of the other products that the Army has in their inventory today. And that's a strategy that the Army's been pushing forward to keep this relevant for the next 40, 50 years by making it open in that aspect, as well as it's going to be interconnected with all the other Army and even other services, the joint services platform. So consider this, I'll say the F-35 for the Army. So this will actually be able to be sharing data back and forth between the F-35s and things, other air platforms, whether it's ground, space, or air. So the Army really took a lean forward and made this really interconnected, as well as very far leaning forward and thinking well into the future versus just here in the now. So hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important given, the evolving nature of threats and how they change over time. I know that the challenges you faced, particularly with lift in Afghanistan with that thin air, how do you adapt to deal with that? That you have a platform that you think you can alter and change over time to remain, relevant to the threats we face. And obviously, if we're looking at keeping you here, we don't want a product that's good for 10 years and then they say, well, this one didn't work. So and I guess that my final question, because I'm sure everybody else has to do with the tax credits, the refundability, and this may be a question for David or Mark, how that is going to work, because I see there are various metrics that come into play if you cannot use the tax credits in a given year. So if somebody wants to just quickly run through that.
I'm happy to start, and then Commissioner Bowden or OPM can jump in. So the way the agreement works is that there will be, the first thing, Sikorsky needs to be awarded the contract and execute a contract. Then there is an 8-year period where they're able to earn funding in a given year, each year for those years, depending on if they're meeting the employment metrics in particular in that initial period. The way that works, Rep. Cheeseman, is if they win one contract, it's up to $6.25 million per year. And if they win 2 contracts, it's up to $9.375 million per year. As I mentioned before, the intent of the agreement that we'll ultimately execute with them is to fully utilize sales and use tax offsets initially. And then the difference, if there is one between sales and use and those numbers I mentioned per year, would be in the form of a payroll tax rebate back to Sikorsky of the funds that are coming in from these new jobs. So that's how it's envisioned. And then for beyond that 8-year period, there's what we call a compliance period, where the company will need to adhere to supplier spend, jobs, as I mentioned previously, and the state will be getting basically a commitment and a guarantee from Lockheed that if there is a deficiency, if they're not meeting those requirements, there will be a repayment, and it'll be rateable based on the actual amount of jobs versus the hurdles. So there's not a cliff, but if there's slightly less jobs, for example, they would have to rebate some of the benefit that was previously given to them and earned.
Okay.
I'll stop there. I'm not sure. Sorry.
Commissioner, go ahead.
No, I didn't know if Mark or Jeff wanted, or Tom Fiore for that matter, wanted to jump in.
Not unheard of, this kind of agreement, so I congratulate everybody that put this together. Also, as mentioned, it's contingent on the awarding of the contracts. That's really the trigger. And then we'll monitor the metrics after and assess for compliance. We have done this before with our team. We do work hand in hand with DECD on these programs. And there are a lot of conversations go back and forth. And oftentimes as part of due process, there's an opportunity for the company that's involved to appeal, to come in and meet with us. Perhaps they're going to meet that timeline, but they may be off by a couple of months. I mean, we don't walk with a heavy hammer. As long as they're doing what they said they were going to do, we really want to encourage them to stay here. And that means we got to have a tax environment that's encouraging for them as well, and people to work with that understand their challenges. So we're ready to go on this thing. We're excited by it. And again, we would work very closely with DECD to ensure that the metrics have been met as in terms of the contract that would be in place.
Okay, so the refundable tax credit that's referred to, if they can't use all the offset, refers to that payroll tax credit? Okay, thank you.
That's correct, yeah.
All right, thank you. I think that's it for me for now. Thank you very much.
Commissioner, if you don't mind, I'll jump in 1 second. I'm Matt Dayton. I'm the Undersecretary for Legal Affairs at OPM. Just want to kind of walk through the procedures of how the credit works. First, it'll be applied against the sales and use tax credit. To the extent that they can't use it against sales and use tax, that will spill over and then it'll be able to be used against the corporation business tax, up to $5 million each year. If that exceeds the tax due, that'll be a refundable piece back to Sikorsky in the form of a tax credit. So it is just go first to sales and use, and then it'll spill over to corporation business tax if they can't use it entirely against their sales and use tax obligation.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Meskers, followed by Representative Farrar.
Well, first, as a representative in the House, I want to thank you for Rocco. I want to thank you for your commentary and the people from Lockheed, particularly Mr. Mitchell. Your efforts to defend and provide the country with appropriate defense with your research and your service to us should be noted. I mean, I know you're a for-profit company, et cetera, but you look at what's going on and where the winds are blowing in Europe with the rolling, violence of the dictatorship looking to take over Ukraine. Our defense industry is an important part of the country. So thank you for your service there. In relation to, I guess I have two business questions I want to look at, which is one, in relation to the Black Hawk business. And I understand the supplanting of the Black Hawk with the new vertical lift helicopters, if you will. I'm surprised at the downward drift there, and there wouldn't be more commercial operations of stripped down versions for general business use, whether it be in the mining industries, whether it be in forestry, et cetera. And how you view that secondary use, once an improved, if you will, military helicopter, and whether you expect that is it a lower profit margin or lower volumes? Will you find a way to maintain that production while you're building a new improved military helicopter? And is there an opportunity space there for further growth? That'd be my first question.
I'll take a shot at it. Robert, maybe if you want to join in. I won't be able to answer the business aspect. What I can tell you is that as we continue to build the UH-60M, the U.S. Army is currently retiring the older model UH-60A aircraft. So those aircraft do come out into a secondary market. We participate primarily from aftermarket support by selling spare parts to the people that buy those aircraft. It is, potentially the way to commercially field aircraft. It's not in our business model. We continue to innovate and design and build new helicopters. So it's something we do watch closely, but at this point, it's not one of our core businesses.
Okay. If it becomes an opportunity for both you and for the state to expand that commercial side of the operation, I'd be thrilled to have us work on that.
When I say we support through the aftermarket, most of our aircraft require about 8,000 hours of, every 8,000 hours a major overhaul. So that overhaul consists of rotor head components and gears and transmission items that are made here in Connecticut. So we will be supporting that fleet long into the future with spare parts that are manufactured in Connecticut, and also through our supply chain. So a lot of the parts are made here in Connecticut as well by our suppliers. To support those older aircraft. As I mentioned, they've been in production now for almost 50 years. So when you go back to the UH-60A, parts are rarer, but we're ramping up that area as well. So we will be supporting those aircraft, but not directly reselling them.
Okay, thank you. And the second piece is a question about the food chain in terms of the talent pool. Given your impact on the Connecticut economy, your supplier chain, and the talent pool that eventually retires from Sikorsky, are we connected, tied in enough in both vocational tech, but I guess even more importantly, through engineering programs in the Connecticut State University system? Are we producing and sourcing a large part of the talent pool? And is there more we can do there for both you and for the suppliers, so that we are creating an educational system that is fulfilling the job demand you might have?
Yeah, I'll start, and then maybe Rocco, you can pile on. So the answer is yes. We have partnerships with many different schools, all the way down to the middle school level. We do a lot with our career pathways that Rocco will probably talk more about, partnering with our technical schools. Just last year, we started a program with schools, Ansoni and Bassick were the two programs we selected, where we brought teachers and administrators in to teach them, sort of a day in the life. They were here for 4 days to learn about STEM type positions, so that they can go back and get to their students early in middle school, to be able to kind of change someone's pathway along the way and make good decisions instead of poor. Over the course of the summer, we have hundreds of interns. In my group alone, we're going to have 42 college kids this year. Usually those students go on to get hired on as direct. We do the same thing in our hourly, in our factories. So we are plugged in with many schools. I'm sure I'll miss a bunch, but Housatonic Community College comes to mind. The curriculum, many of the professors and teachers and the schools around us have been former employees, so they have that technical background. They also know what type of skills we're looking for. So we do a lot with pretty much all aspects. We have our Camp Sikorsky, where we bring kids in to camp on the front lawn, and as part of that weekend of being here, they earn merit badges and things like aerodynamics and electrical and many of the sciences that really turn on young people to get on a good career path, as Rocco mentioned, to be a contributing citizen later in life.
Okay.
Robert.
George, I just want to add one thing before we turn it to Rocco. Representative Meskers, from a corporate perspective, this area of workforce development, workforce training, apprenticeships is a growth area, and it's something that we have focused on at the very senior levels to drive into all of our operations across the country. So our perspective is that this is sort of the beginning, the floor, and we're actively looking for new opportunities beyond what we're already doing to expand how we're feeding that talent pipeline. So as we maintain our workforce in Connecticut, if we win these competitive bids, I see this aspect of what we do at Lockheed Martin as a growth opportunity to really go beyond the great work we're already doing. So this, I think, would be a future conversation as we work to try to bring in the best talent we can into our facilities in Bridgeport and Stratford and other.
If I can add on one more time, sorry. We have hired 450 people in the last 2 years into our factories here in Connecticut during COVID time. So it was a little bit challenging, but we figured out a process for putting students through our Sikorsky University. We actually have a formal training program, our mentor protege program. So we've been successful there. We are very alert to the fact that over the next few years, we could have a wave of retirements. So we are preparing for that as well. We've got some overlap plans, and We do have some critical skills, like I'm sure you hear a lot about welders and things in Connecticut. We don't necessarily use that skill set, but things like 5-axis machinists and CBN gear grinding operators are scarce. So we usually grow our own in that case. But 450 in the last 2 years, and we'll continue on that trend. Rock, your turn.
So just to go back to George's point on the Bassick-Ansonia partnership that we did, this was a direct result of our joint diversity program. We know it's important that we need to reach out to the community. We need to reach out to diverse groups and let them know, hey, listen, there's another way of life here. You don't have to go to college, right, to have a great career, right? You can come here, right? And that was the reason we piloted with these 2 schools and brought the teachers in and just, got them educated as to, a different route, a different path that these students could take. I cannot talk enough about the School to Career program, or the Career Pathways program, as it's called. It's about 20 years old now. We initially started with 3 students, and it was just reaching out to the technical schools in the area. The reason the first year we only had 3 students is because when the program, and I like to take credit for the program, but it was actually brought to me by someone who worked with the IBEW. And, they showed me this program on a VHS tape, which half of the students don't even know what it is anymore. I got really excited, went to Beth Amano, who was the vice president of human resources at the time, and, sold her on the program. And it has just grown year after year after year. We had a couple down years because of COVID, but, the program just really gives the students a sense of work ethic. It encourages them to do the right thing in school, do the right thing in their lives, so they can come back and enjoy a career here. If you look at the program now, we've received awards on national levels. Some of the students have even been to the White House. And actually, students that came in through the program are now running the program. So it's come full circle. As George said, we bring hundreds and hundreds of students through the shop to give them, just a tour and look, this is what you could be doing. And this is what you can earn. And we've been very successful. And I'll tell my member, not that I have a lot of these, but when they screw up, anytime Sikorsky puts a job posting out there's hundreds of applicants for every single job that goes up, because they understand that, again, it's not a job, it's a career. And we're all very proud of that, and we want to continue that.
Well, listen, thank you very much. Mr. Chair, no further questions. I want to thank David, Commissioner of DECD. I think performance-based tax credits with the appropriate metrics are key for protecting the taxpayers of the state, and more importantly, to the people who presented today. Thank you for protecting all of us, and thank you for your service.
Representative Farrar, followed by Representative Zupkis.
Thanks, Chairman. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Just a couple follow-up questions based on my colleagues' questions. And I will let you all decide who wants to jump in. I won't navigate that. I think, Robert, you mentioned a little bit, and Rocco as well, about just some of the workforce strategies that Representative Meskers was getting into. Does the company right now have an apprenticeship program?
We do. And
Yeah.
I believe we're a leader in the industry with how far we've taken it so far. We've been working with the White House. We continue to try to work with this White House, and we're looking to expand, I think, in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's what I was wondering, if you could speak to it all, like what the plans are for that program, given this type of partnership.
Well, this partnership, obviously, what we want to do is continue to bring our apprenticeship programs into Connecticut and to other locations across the country. So I don't know if I can speak today to a specific plan for Connecticut as of today, but what I can do is I can go back to our apprenticeship folks and I can follow up with you directly.
That would be great. Oh, go ahead.
I can add on, man. I
Yeah.
think, the program that Rocco referred to, our Career Pathways program, is apprentice-like. So the students do get credit in college, in high school, and as well as on the job training. So we are partnered with the Department of Education. So they're very actively involved in that program. There's a very a selection process that the schools recommend and nominate the students to go into the program. And then we interview each of the potential candidates. On a typical year, we bring in 42 students, and all but one student over time has been hired on direct. A couple have gone on to college, which is a great thing. So it's almost 100% guarantee employment upon graduation of the program. We bring in juniors and seniors, so it's been a really good talent pool for us. So we have talked about making it a formal apprenticeship program. There are a little bit of hurdles to get over for that to happen, but we treat it like it is an apprenticeship program. And probably the best graduation gift is a permanent full-time job. So it's a good program.
So, and just to add on to that a little bit, we have looked at trying to make this a full-fledged apprentice program. We've worked with Todd Birch on it, and because of the number of jobs that we have at Sikorsky, we probably have 80 different occupational groups with 5 or 6 different jobs within each occupational group. It's very difficult. What we did the last time out, and this was with Todd's help, the last class that we graduated actually got a pre-apprentice certificate upon completion of the program that, holds weight, right? With employers, it's not just, a certificate saying you completed this program.
Thanks, Rocco, for that. That's super helpful to hear that there was a kind of certificate associated with what you all are up to. Yeah, and it would just be great to hear, how this fits into your future planning. And just one more follow-up question, a little bit down the workforce development path as well. I certainly heard you mention, some of your efforts and just an understanding of needing to diversify your workforce, I would imagine, particularly with women and people of color. And I wanted to know for you all, what are your key strategies in those areas? I think for us as a state, and especially with all of the work we've been doing here with our Office of Workforce Strategies, we want to ensure, right, that moving forward, the investments that we're making are truly bringing folks into these jobs that have often been left out. So I'd love to hear a little bit more detail about what your strategies specifically are.
Yeah, I can start with this one. At Lockheed Martin, our business resource groups, as we call them, BRGs, are extremely important in all aspects of the company, whether it be in the salary workforce or hourly. And I would applaud our forefathers, Rocco, back in, I think it was 2016, our collective bargaining agreement was modified to add a diversity inclusion amendment to the contract. We call it Letter 35, which really allows us to really push down D&I right to the factory floor. That effort is really making really good headway from a participation. Our hourly associates participate in our BRGs. They brought that up at the beginning. We have everything from military pride, women in network, pride, just to name a few, OLA for our Hispanic and PAN for Asian. We have Black Engineers Caucus, et cetera. I mean, there's a number of different BRGs. Each of the leaders in the company participates and encourages, nurtures, funds. And our latest big breakthrough, I'll speak for Rocco, is he now has women leaders on the executive board of the union. We meet with them, the whole group, Rocco and I, on a monthly basis, and all their ideas that they bring forward. Made a lot of progress in the last 2 months on expectant moms. It makes their job a little bit more difficult in the factory with nursing rooms that need to be available to them, and we're actually getting stuff done as a result of that feedback. And Rock, maybe if maybe give your perspective. Rocco?
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with what George said. And it's, I did put 2 women, asked them to run with me on our executive board this time out. And it is just so refreshing to sit there and have conversations with them. And, they're excited. There's things that they want to do. There's things that they want to improve. And, I sit there and I'm not embarrassed to say, but I should be. There's ideas that they brought to not only me, but to George and I, and we're like, man, we're supposed to be leaders. Why didn't we think of it? So, we talk about diversity, and I think we've had the opportunity to actually see it in action. And, I think we all understand it's the right thing to do. It makes us all better. It makes the company better. And, whatever we can do through those letter 35 meetings, where we're just going to continue to do. I can tell you in the schools who really have most of the input into who comes into our career pathways program, do a great job at selecting a diverse group. I remember one meeting we had with the group where the National Defense Authorization Act had just been passed, which we fared really well under. And Rosa DeLauro wanted to come down to the Union Hall and make an announcement from there. So, we call up George, and I'm like, George, I got to take the kids, right? We got to. So they bust them down to the Union Hall, and Rosa was just floored at the diversity of that group. And it's an amazing thing to see. It's something that I know we're all very proud of.
And I'd like to invite Julie Dow as also. Julie?
Yeah. We invite everybody, right? We're very proud.
Julie's going to speak.
Not only the Union Hall, but the factory and our workforce. We love showing it off.
And George, Julie Dow, just for everyone to know who Julie is at Lockheed Martin, she is our Director of Economic Development and runs economic development for the entire corporation. Over to you, Julie.
Great. And thank you, Robert. And thank you, everyone, for hosting us today. I just wanted to provide a little additional information regarding our corporate apprenticeship program. We were very, as Robert alluded to earlier, we were very engaged with the White House in initiatives related to setting up apprenticeship programs. And we did commit over a period of 5-year period from 2019 to 2023 to have at least 8,400 apprenticeship programs apprentices in place throughout the 5-year period. That is across the country, of course, but Stratford is one of our main locations that is a user of that program. And that program also, it actually conforms to national standards. And we have been far exceeding our all of our goals within that program, and having as Rocco and George have mentioned, very, very positive results from that. And we're, definitely very excited to continue measures in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I appreciate all of the responses, and yeah, absolutely would appreciate any of the follow-up on was mentioned on some of the apprenticeship programs, who's been participating, the outcomes you've seen, and then appreciate all the commentary around the recruitment and retention of just incredible diverse workforce. And I hope that that's something we can look at as we're moving forward in this partnership together. So thanks everyone for the questions, and I'll defer to the rest of my colleagues and to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Next up is Representative Zepkis, followed by Senator Formica.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. And I personally have a love of aviation, and even a more so love of our military. And so thank you for being a part of that. My question is, I am a little concerned about funding of our military from a federal level. And so my question is, I've heard that we're not putting as much money in our military. I believe that should be one of our top funding sources is the military and into these types of things. what do you see happening with that, and how that will affect your progress on these two pieces of equipment?
Thank you, Representative Zupkus. I'll take that for us. It's obviously been a concern, as the budget has grown over the past 4 to 5 years. We knew we were coming into a period where we could see significant budget pressure on the Defense Department. So we've been planning and anticipating that. However, I would say that the last 2 years hasn't necessarily turned out that way. Congress last year added $29 billion above the administration's request for defense, and the administration supported that. And if you look at what's happening now in Europe and in Ukraine in particular, but and also the growing threats, frankly, from China and Asia, I think there's a renewed urgency, right, for the need for strong defense and national security spending. So I'd expect to see defense spending go up again this year. The administration sent over the largest defense budget, frankly, in history, and we expect Congress to add additional funding on top of that, again, probably very similar to what they did last year. So that doesn't mean there isn't pressure on the budget. Inflation is a concern. It's causing real downward pressure because the value of the dollar is diminished. So it's impacting programs. And there will always be potential for trade-offs and priorities within the Defense Department that we can't control. And so that's always something we're looking at. And the funding doesn't always flow down to the services in an equal way. So we're going to continue working that issue. But I would say that the outlook, I think for now, for the time being, is better than it was 2 years ago. And we just have to make sure that Lockheed Martin and Sikorsky and all of our partners in industry, we view ourselves as an extension of the government. We need to make sure we spend taxpayer dollars wisely and perform. And I think we'll continue to see the investment we need. But there are always decisions out of our control, and we have to live with that. And so you can't fully predict the future, but I think the security situation we're seeing across the globe right now is certainly changed the discussion somewhat.
And Mr. Head, if I may, Representative, if I may, I would also add here that our delegation in Washington has been very supportive of the efforts that you're doing and has been vocal about the fact that they want to continue seeing the federal government invest in our job center here and in the defense industry that we proudly have in Connecticut, whether it's Sikorsky or EB. I'm hoping you can confirm that, Mr. Head.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for mentioning that, because I would say that that's absolutely the case. The Connecticut delegation is at the top of the pack in advocating for national security and the aerospace and defense industry in Washington, D.C. And we work very closely with every single member, and we really appreciate how strong they lean in. And I'd say for a smaller delegation, the Connecticut delegation punches well above its weight and is a force to be reckoned with. So that couldn't be. I couldn't say it's stronger. They really is an incredible delegation, and they work very hard on our behalf every day in Congress, and certainly with the administration.
Well, thank you, as they should, because you're big players in Connecticut, and it is bragging rights to have you here. And I know my family brags to everyone about what you produce in Connecticut for our military, and we are a military family. So thank you. That is a concern of mine. I'm glad to see more funding is coming. I'm sad to see why it's coming, to be honest. But it is what it is at this point, and we do need to be strong. We need to be a strong nation and a strong state. And so thank you for that, and thank you for doing what you do.
Thank you.
Senator Formica, followed by Representative Chafee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here and for crafting this opportunity for our future. I have a couple of questions. One might be for David, but the first one, as I recall, and I think somebody said 2016 was the last deal we put together with the state. There were incentives for retrofitting the facility to adapt to the next generation. It sounds like a new 5-year contract for the Black Hawk is going to continue production there. So do we have 2 full-fledged production areas at Sikorsky now to handle the Black Hawk as it moves through its next 20 years, and then this next generation of helicopters that are moving, or were they able to be blended and the synergy created?
I can answer the physical factory layout we have, and maybe Commissioner Lehman could answer the specifics on, are we meeting the current agreement? So that today in production, we have multiple assembly lines here in Stratford, Connecticut. We have 2 production lines for the Black Hawk, one for the Medevac, one for the Black Hawk. We have the CH-53K in the same major assembly area. And then we have a second part of our factory, actually second and third part of the Stratford complex, that assemble the combat rescue helicopter and the MH-60R. So we also have our executive aircraft program here. So it's really almost 6 assembly areas and lines that build our U.S. military products. And I think, Senator, to your second part of the question, David might be able to answer the current metrics. We are meeting all aspects of the current agreement. And sir, if you can.
Yes,
Thank you, George. And before David jumps in, there's probably a report somewhere that offers the measurement of how that first 5 years or so has performed and what it's done for the benefit. We all know the jobs are here. They didn't go to Florida, and you know, we appreciate that. And it probably was predicated the growth of this agreement. So, you know, we have to kind of add this to the benefit of that. And I understand that. So I'd love to see what those metrics are. And then finally, the last question before David jumps in is, you know, what an opportunity for the state of Connecticut. We have the Columbia class facility about to be completed to produce the next generation of submarines. We have offshore wind, hopefully on the cusp of being developed. And then we have, you know, you guys being around, we're going to need to import about 10,000 welders, I think, here. So we got to find a way to get that going. But I'll leave it with that. And David, if you could either wrap that up or send us a copy of anything that you might have already developed.
Absolutely. So DECD produces an annual report each year. I can send around the link, and inclusive of all the programs we do, as well as the Lockheed Special Act from 2016. So just at a high level, though, Senator, $220 million agreement that goes to 2032. And within that agreement to date, as George mentioned, Lockheed Sikorsky is in compliance with all the parameters that were required. In terms of the financial benefits that they've received as a result of that, they've received 17 million approximately in sales and use tax offset and 27 million in grants over the time period since the agreement. So 44.5 million of total assistance of the 220 that can be earned between now and 2032. And again, they are in compliance. So I'll make sure that the committee has the link, but it can all be found on our website on our annual report.
And that will include the economic impact to the region and to the state as a result of the investment that the state has made, correct?
I need to confirm the specifics of what's in the annual report. If there's information, if there's a desire for additional information, we can certainly run the analysis and provide it.
Perfect, thank you. I appreciate everything that everybody's doing, and it seems like a great team effort. Paul, what a nice job coordinating the whole thing. So thank you for your effort on that.
Thanks, Senator. Representative Cheeseman, I'm sorry, Representative Chafee, followed by Representative Cheeseman for the second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for putting this forum on. Appreciate the information. I apologize if some of the questions I have were already covered. I had a conflict this morning, so I was a little bit late. But does anybody have an estimate as to the dollar value of what the federal contracts will be?
Andy, probably.
Yep. Sorry about that. I can take that one. So what we're looking at, Representative, is probably north of $8 billion for the initial. And then when we're looking at the total lifetime, we're estimating when we look at our business case of much greater than $80 billion total for the life of this program. And then when you start looking at international opportunities that this will definitely open up, we're thinking much more than that as well.
Was that 80 billion or million?
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B. Okay, thank you. And then the way this is structured, are the credits based on new jobs that are created or maintaining the existing jobs that are here?
Representative, it's David Lehman. I'll answer that question. So it's total employment in Stratford. There's baseline levels depending on the year and depending if they win 1 or 2 contracts. It's very difficult to say it's a new job. I believe it is a new job because the baseline, I don't know if you saw the presentation that George gave at the outset, but if Sikorsky is not successful in winning 1 or both of these contracts, you will see employment in Stratford largely go down over the next 2 decades and decrease significantly. So in my mind, that is arguably the base case scenario. So these are incremental jobs versus what is the base case if they don't win. So I do view them as new jobs, but the way the agreement will be structured, there's going to be a baseline of jobs, a minimum that they need to meet for the compliance period and then the period thereafter.
Thank you. That was a good primer for my next question. I think this is kind of the elephant in the room almost. What if this agreement does not go through? What does that mean for the future of Sikorsky in Connecticut?
And Representative, if we can just be precise, you're saying if they're not awarded the contract or the assistance agreement between the state and Sikorsky?
The assistance agreement.
Well, I'm happy to touch on that, and then Robert and the team can jump in. So the company submitted their proposal, their bid to the Army previously, and then we went public with the agreement that we have, tentative agreement, subject to the legislature concurring with it. And ultimately, this is a partnership, and that's how we view this. We think this is an incredible investment for Connecticut, and wanted to assist Sikorsky by, trying to address their cost and make sure they've got the most cost competitive agreement. That said, the company is bearing the risk if for some reason the legislature does not concur and does not allow the administration to enter this agreement. That's risk that the company is bearing.
Robert, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. And Representative Chafee, I would just add that it would increase costs ultimately down the road and impact our ability to be competitive as well in the future. So it really will have a macro impact as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Cheeseman for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be quick. We talked about workforce development, and you have hundreds of suppliers, some of them smaller throughout the state. What are you seeing in terms of their ability to find the workforce they need to give you the worker, give you the bits and pieces that you need to put your machinery together?
I think, we, being a resident of Connecticut, we kind of all know the situation. There is more job openings than positions or people able to fill. So there is definitely a pull on the system to find trained workers. I think our suppliers are no different than we are. They get the benefit in most cases of being higher technology. So they do get the benefit of destinations where people want to work. There are 242 suppliers, everything from the local printer to the very advanced machine shop. So there's a little bit for everyone. If you were to look across the state, I think I counted over 70 different towns and cities that have suppliers for us out of the 169. And that's probably being very conservative, where if you were to count, the 242 ebbs and flows depending on what's going on, whether it be, we're going to have our family day next year to commemorate our 100th anniversary. There will probably be 50 or 100 more suppliers that'll be involved with food purveying and things like that. So there's always an up and a down. I think the 242 is really the rock solid, actually making parts. And so to really answer your question, I think it is a challenge, and it's something that we try to assist our suppliers with. We have frequent conversations with them through our supply chain network. I'll be speaking next month at the CBIA, as well as a MassMep for regional on digital transformation and jobs of the future. So we try to get out in the community and kind of spread the word and try to attract talent to aerospace. So I know I'm not answering your question with a specific, we're going to hire 10 more people tomorrow, but it is a challenge. So we've gone to the extent we talked earlier with trying to get down to the middle school level to try to, help students along the way, that either want to go to college or may not, select a career that gets them into a STEM curriculum that makes them employable in, our higher tech industries, whether it be biomed or aerospace. We're not brainwashing saying you have to come here and be a machinist, or it's really more to influence our future workforce to kind of come in our direction.
Okay, thank you. And I think your look to get down into the middle schools is vital, because I think I'd love to see you in the elementary schools. What kid doesn't love helicopters? And just to get a plug in for those smaller suppliers, I know one of the commissioner's priorities, as we have the governor's office here and my two chairs of finance, is getting that manufacturing apprenticeship tax credit to our pass-through entities. So consider that your paid ad for today, everybody who could help move that forward. And thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me go for a second time.
Thank you, Representative. And looks like to close out this morning, we will go to my colleague and co-chair, Senator Fanfara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to congratulate everyone on both the Sikorsky side and state for bringing this, and especially to the Lamont administration, that I know that the administration's made it a point of not leading on how we do deals like this, but I'm really happy to see that this kind of initiative is before us. And I'll just begin my very brief remarks in a question with when the 2016 deal was done. I don't know if there's a better endorsement of the work that Sikorsky does. When I heard at that time, it's reflective of workers who are out on a rig, an oil rig, whatever kind of rig, where they may be there for a month or longer, and how it was told to me that many of them, when it's their time to go back for some R&R, reconnect with their families, they wait for a Sikorsky helicopter to pick them up. If that doesn't say a lot about the quality of the work that your company performs and the workers perform, I don't know what does. When your life is in the balance and you say, that's where I want to be on that helicopter. And that was a very uplifting thing for me to hear. A lot of talk today about the workforce issues, and in your slide presentation, there was a mention of continuing the diversity efforts. Can you tell us, to the best of that you know now, in terms of African American and Latino worker percentages, what does it look like at Sikorsky currently?
Yeah, George, I mean, I don't have the answer to that, Senator, but I can get one for the record and follow up with you quickly.
I'd appreciate that. And with respect to questions earlier about reaching into the VOTEC system, and even earlier, I think this is as important a partnership between the state and Sikorsky and other companies as well, but because this initiative before us today is involving Sikorsky and the state, to really make this a part of this agreement, not as an adjunct or whatever, but it is critical that when opportunities and it was Rocco did a great job of explaining the opportunities of a job like this, how it's transformative for not only the worker, but for families when you get a job working here. And that's what it can mean, it should mean to our workforce across the board, not just to some, not just to those who generally who look like me or look like just about everyone, almost everyone on this call, but what is reflective of our population in general. And those opportunities can change a lot of things in our country. that we struggle with today as a nation. So I would hope that that is something Commissioner Lehman in particular and others from the administration. I know how Chief of Staff Mounds feels about this. We've had many a discussion over the years. But this is an opportunity. It's not just a concept. It's not just a theory, but a real opportunity to accomplish not only this initiative, which is fantastic for Connecticut, and I could go on for a long time and asking questions about how Lockheed Martin sees Connecticut, why they wanted to be here. That's for another conversation of the day. But I would hope that we, not just you, but we can advance this aspect of engaging all sectors of our population over the initiative, that the life of this initiative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. And with that, I think we will conclude this informational hearing. I do want to echo what I said at the beginning of the meeting, which is that I think this is a really exciting and important deal for the state. And I look forward to working with Senator Fanfara and the administration to advance this bill in the coming weeks to get this done before the session is over. So I want to thank you all for your time today. Thank you to your service to the state of Connecticut. And we will conclude this hearing and move forward. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.